Good morning, everybody. We are back. It is the right side of campus. We're live on a Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. I'm your host, the big man on campus, with my co-host, Donnie Rightside. Donnie, lot to talk about today. Basketball. We got plenty of basketball, plenty of March Madness talk. Who's in, who's out, who's my favorite team in the country right now, and who do I think is going to win it? A lot to talk about. My father's birthday today, Donnie. So I know he's not out there watching, but hey, shout out to you, Pops. Happy birthday. We get into the show. Donnie Rightside, how you doing?
Doing good. Your pop shares a birthday, Jeff, out there with Charles Barkley. So not a bad day to pick out on February the 20th. But yeah, a lot to talk about. Good card tonight shaping up, Jeff, across college basketball as you see a couple things down. We'll talk about hitting the hardwood just a few moments here and get after some of these games. But overall, good card. Last night, limited card out there, which we'll talk about also. Not a lot. I didn't have any wagers last night. I should have had a wager because I did send that to Big Man. I was thinking about taking Detroit on the road, but I didn't bet it. So I'm not going to take any credit for it. We'll move on tonight. We'll see what happens.
Yep, moving on, see what happens. It's Tuesday. We'll see what's going on here with everyone. If you're out there, do us a favor, hit the like button. Also, share the show on Twitter. Retweet it, get it out there to people that might not see it on a regular basis. A great way to kind of keep it moving, keep it through people that we love all the listeners, but it's always nice to open it up to maybe someone that maybe hasn't seen it. Let's get into the show today. Donnie, headlines we started out with, and obviously, plenty to do here, so stick around. We go back to the TV classic of the day. We'll bring that back at the end of the show. We start out, Donnie, J.D. Martinez to the Red Sox. A big move here in baseball, and really a move that I thought they had to make. You kind of want to stay with the Yankees if you can. If they go out and get Giancarlo Stanton, you want to get yourself some power. And look, some power that I thought they needed. I mean, you have to lose David Ortiz. They let Travis Shaw walk. You didn't have a ton of power on this team last year. Mitch Moreland and certain other guys, but you needed this kind of power. And I got to tell you, man, I think JD Martinez is a hell of a player. This is a guy that had 45 home runs last year. This is a guy that over the last 3 or 4 years has had Mike Trout type numbers, and you can look that up. He's one of the only two other guys I think to hit. Have the slugging percentage up above 500, have 300 home runs, or I don't know, whatever it is. Really impressive stuff he's been able to pull off, JD Martinez. Last year, Donnie, in 62 games in Arizona, 29 home runs. I think it's a great move. You throw him in that DH role. And now all of a sudden, Donnie, the Red Sox, a team with a better pitching staff as far as starters than the Yankees, and with the lineup that can almost kind of match what they have.
Yeah, no, looking at it's just baseball, and it's a Scott Boras client. I did get a chuckle out of it, Jeff, because you probably heard the same thing or some of the filters that came out. Sure, he signed for what? Basically 5 years, 100 million, in that range. But Scott Boras was wanting a $200 million contract, Jeff, for JD Martinez. Wasn't able to get it, so they front loaded the contract to have an opt out in 2 years. And the design of that is once the market resets for Manny Machado and Bryce Harper, who'll be a free agent right after that, which does make sense from a business standpoint. But I just wish, Jeff, it gets back to the point. I just wish baseball would get back in line. I mean, hey, if you're a Yankees fan, if you're a Boston Red Sox fan, and you have, a Dodgers fan, and you have unlimited resources, this is what you love because you can overpay for mistakes. Hey, we'll pay JD Martinez $100 million. Doesn't work out, so what? We'll go get Bryce Harper for $400 million if that doesn't work out. I just wish it was more on the even plane because in the NFL, as well as we know, opening day outside of the Cleveland Browns, most people think they can make the playoffs. But in baseball, it is the haves and the have-nots. But we've seen teams with lower payrolls, like the Tampa Bay Rays getting to the World Series in 2008, some surprise teams, the Royals before all these free agents are hitting here. So some of these teams can surprise. I just wish there was a little bit more parity in Major League Baseball overall in salaries, Jeff.
Yeah, but as far as the move itself, I think a real good move for them. Obviously, he's going to come in and help right away. He's going to give them that needed power that they had to have. What's up, everyone out there? Guam White, Musgogster, Matt, Bruce, Colton, Reed, or not Reed, Todd, sorry. Subsist, Matt Varnum, Justin, Tobias Mickelson. Welcome in. Tobias Mickelson. Greetings.
Swedish,
Hey,
maybe.
how are you? Uh,
Yeah.
Mickelson, Dutch maybe?
Yeah,
Dutch,
somewhat. Yeah,
Swedish?
yeah. So we're in the
Uh,
right area code there.
Sounds interesting. Let us know. Donnie, I want to get to this Ray Cruz story last. What do you got on
Yeah.
Bill Polian today?
Yeah, I mean, if you've known me for years, I just can. At any chance I get, I like to rip Bill Polian because of the whole mantra where I'm just going to put you on TV, so you're a genius. Maybe he did something as a GM 40 years ago that was nice, but over the past, I don't know, let's just say since he did take over for the Indianapolis Colts, they did win a Super Bowl, correct? But the balance and how I weigh GMs and how they go forward, Jeff, is not how good you are with your quarterback, right? Because let me tell you something, Jeff. If I put you in charge of the Indianapolis Colts in 1998, you had the number one overall pick in the draft. I don't want to hear your nonsense saying, "Ooh, how close it was between Ryan Leaf and oh man, it was so close. Everybody had it 50-50, but I made the choice for Peyton Manning, and that's why we got a Super Bowl out of that." You're only as good on your roster, Jeff, as your 1 through 53, not your overall one player, which is why I like to bash Ted Thompson for the Green Bay Packers, who has Aaron Rodgers and can't build a roster for shit around the guy, but yet he's a genius because he doesn't spend money in free agency because he has one of the top 3 quarterbacks of all time. So let's get back to the Bill Polian point here. If you haven't heard so yet, over the past couple of years, maybe he's losing his mind, but ESPN continues to roll out the old man on the show from his comments saying, if I had a vote for the Hall of Fame, T.O.'s not getting in. I just don't think he was good enough for the Hall of Fame, which is one of the more ridiculous statements you're ever going to hear. Now, fast forward, and it doesn't matter your thoughts on Jackson. What's his name? Slipped my mind. The quarterback for Louisville, coming out. What is he? 6'3", 6'4", heading into the draft. Bill Polian doesn't like him. I don't like him as an overall quarterback. I don't think he's going to work as a starter because his game, although electric, that whole Michael Vick, aspect to it, you're going to end up getting yourself hurt. Whether or not he makes it in pro football, I think he can be more of a slash type guy, be a slot receiver, come in, run some wildcat, and be effective in that package. But that's neither here nor there, Jeff. If I gave you my opinion on Lamar Jackson of Louisville and said, you know what, Jeff, I don't think he's going to make it. You know why? He's not that fast, and he's a really short quarterback, although he's 6'3", 6'4". It's time for Bill Polian to go off ESPN. Been saying it for a decade now. Whenever I see the guy and he opens his mouth, I don't believe a damn thing near he says. And if you look at the whole Nick Foles situation, him spouting off saying it starts with 2 twos and 2 number 1s before I even begin the conversation for Nick Foles. We all know quarterback is of a premium in the NFL. And if the Eagles got a first-round draft pick, somebody's going to offer him a 1, Nick Foles is going to be traded. So just the whole out of touch. And if you're going to mail it in this late in your career, at least know what you're talking about.
Obviously, Donnie continues to not like Bill Polian. And look, I get it. I mean, he makes some off the wall comments. Uh, as far as Lamar Jackson, I don't know that I disagree with him. As far as the height thing, I don't think that's relevant. I think he's fine as far as height. But yeah, we'll continue to find out what goes on with Bill Polian. He isn't the first announcer on ESPN that has it all backwards. Uh, Big Ryan Money, I'm listening to your show at Disney on Ice. Without it, I would have blown my brains out. Yesterday okay, wow. Disney on Ice in the morning, very early, Donnie. No,
Yeah, usually because I like to squeeze in 2 shows, Jeff. Maybe you get like the 11 o'clock, somewhere in that range, 10:30, and then they're going to try to swing one in at 3:30 to try to double dip on that, Jeff.
interesting. Very very interesting. I didn't know that. I always thought it was like at night or something. Donnie, our third story headline wise today, Ray Caruth, who look, people have probably forgotten about. Many people might not remember Ray Caruth. Many people might not even know who Ray Caruth is, but uh, we'll set the scene here. Ray Caruth is a former football player for the Carolina Panthers that was arrested and charged for basically the conspiracy to murder his pregnant girlfriend, who at the time let him know she was pregnant. He decided he didn't want to have a kid. He wanted to have an abortion. From what the affidavit said, she didn't want to do that. To avoid paying child support and having to deal with it, he had someone whack her or try to whack her. It didn't happen. She ended up dying a month later anyway, due to what happened. And Ray Cruz now, who has served, I almost forgot about Ray Cruz. It's been so long. I mean, I was a young kid when this happened, but
He
I
was a good
remember the
football player
story.
too. Wasn't like a guy,
Yeah,
one of those lower rung players. He was a pretty good NFL player and a great college
no, he
player.
he was. That's right. He was a great player with the Carolina Panthers. And back in 2001, he was sentenced to 18 to 24 years. Well, he's coming up to be released, I guess, in October, and now Ray wants to. Now keep in mind, the child that Ray ended up, his girl ended up having was born with complications. He ended up having cerebral palsy. The kid's now 18 years old, and old Ray wants custody. He doesn't really think that this is going to work, does he? I mean, listen, I've read into the story. I get who Ray Cruz is. This is a guy that at the time, obviously wasn't ready to raise his child, so he took it into his own hands and committed the unspeakable. But what on earth? Listen, I'm all for rehabilitation. I think there are certain people that can be rehab. Is Ray Cruz? I'm not sure, probably, but it's not my job to decide that. As far as Ray, as far as running and dealing with his kid, first of all, I mean, he's been out of the kid's life his whole life. Does the kid even know who he is? Does the kid even want to be cool with him? Remember Donnie and He Got Game? It's similar situation here.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure that if my mom was murdered by someone, I can't say I'd be willing to run with open arms. According to the mother of the woman that was killed, I've forgiven Ray already, but to have any type of relationship with him, there does have to be some repentance. Adams told a newspaper. I think this opens the door, but I can definitively say he's not ever going to have custody of Chancer. I could have told him that too. Listen, a lot of the time when you're in prison, I've noticed you come out with some of these ridiculous requests. You think you can handle things and you can't. This is never going to happen. Ray's ruined the kid's life, basically. I can't say I'm thinking he'd be willing to have any interest in the kid coming back. According to this, Donnie, maybe this all could have been, kind of found out early. According to when the Panthers drafted him out of Colorado, he was noted back then as being very self-centered and immature. He has also talked about a new relationship with God. That he owes his son and that he let him down. Listen, Ray, you can try to repay your son and make your son like you again, but the fact that you actually think, by the way, he's 18. Why would anyone give him custody? Kid's 18 years old, Donnie. What would that matter?
No, yeah. I mean, if nobody remembers the story, and it's a real punk move as well, getting the hit job. And I remember and this was before, Twitter, internet, all that
Right, he
stuff
didn't
back
even
in
do
the
it
day.
himself.
Yeah, and he was found hiding like a couple apartments away in a trunk of somebody's car where they end up arresting him. But let's get back to the initial point with Ray Caruth. Just being I mean, come on. First of all, you're in the NFL. You're probably you're not a bum in the NFL. So let's just say the wide receiver, not a running back position. He plays 10 years, makes good money, and maybe he doesn't like the baby's mama. There's a lot of professional athletes and a lot of famous people and a lot of not famous people, Jeff, that make a mistake, have a one night stand, and end up with a kid, and the kid turns out wonderful. You don't have to have that great a relationship with the mother, but that is your kid. You have an instant kinship once that kid is born and once that kid, is, pregnant with the mother. I mean, once you have kids, you'll understand that. But let's get back to the case in point in this. The whole thing that's hilarious to me is, Jeff, and I do agree with you. You can be rehabilitated. You can take a plan. You can get your education. You can come out a better man. Now, the point here with me that I have a problem with is nobody's going to get mad at Ray Caruth. I mean, some people will come out and say, you know what? I really messed up. I did 20 years. I'm a man of my word. I'm going to come out and try to make this better. There's nothing I can do. I killed my son's mother. I permanently disabled my son over killing my son's mother. But now I want to come back into his life. And if he doesn't accept me, that's fine. But I want to reach out the olive branch and say, I'm sorry. Hear my story out. Hear how I struggled with this for years. And I want to be back in your life. I can understand that. And if the kid doesn't want it, that's also fine and good. But let's get back to the point of custody, Jeff. What does he want custody for? He's 18. Now, Jeff, if you don't know the way the system works is, I'm not sure. Does he want custody because the kid's getting a couple grand in checks a month from the government
I
that
think
now would be turned over to him? But what does he even know about raising a kid with cerebral palsy after 18 years when the
that's
grandmother who raised him right from birth?
that's my thoughts here as well. I mean, I get the kid also has, obviously has physical problems, mental problems, and as far as raising the kid, what has Ray read about? He thinks he's fit to handle this situation.
Yeah.
Listen, this is never going to happen. I guess in this kind of situation, I guess custody is important, but I mean, yeah, this has the looks of, hey, now that I didn't want to pay child support for you all your life, now you're getting disability checks and all sort of stuff. I think I should be entitled to that. Uh, Ray Cruz a bum. I mean, he is what he is. Listen, he is going to get out according to the law. He'll never have the same life again. Neither will this kid, and obviously the mother's gone as well. Ray Cruz, you could argue, should never get out of prison just due to the fact that someone he tried to kill died. He affected his child's life. I mean, Why does Ray Cruz deserve a second chance to get out? I'm all for second chances. I make that very clear. But Ray Cruz did murder somebody. It was premeditated. There was a reason it happened, and it was something that he prepared. Kind of I don't understand here. I'm not sure what the difference is here. But hey, we'll see what happens. This is a situation where I don't think he's going to get custody, so it's not going to matter. But as far as repairing a relationship, who knows? They would have to be very forgiving. But hey, Donnie, people forgive, man. I mean, I remember, around where I live now. I mean, there was a couple years ago, a guy went into an Amish schoolhouse and killed several little
Yep.
kids and stuff. And the next day the Amish were forgiving. I mean, sometimes people forgive, but you know, I can't say the kid is he even in a mental state to forgive anyone? Does he even know who Ray Cruz is? I mean,
No.
it's a shame. But we'll see what happens. The guy that did do this murder, I believe he's still locked. I mean, so he's locked up, I believe. Donnie, you know about that?
No, I don't. And he should still be locked. They should both still be locked up because I mean, part and parcel to murder. A lot of times you're on the scene. Let's just say you rob a store, you and your buddy. Your boy goes in with the gun and pulls the trigger. You're still getting charged for murder as well. So I don't know why one would get out over the other, unless he had like priors, Jeff, where it's probably like a double down. Because I'm pretty sure the guy that you asked to do it wasn't a clean, upstanding citizen to begin with, which is probably why he has more time.
Yeah, according to the Winston-Salem Journal, and this was a while ago, uh, one of the people involved in this, Michael Eugene Kennedy, walked free. He was the guy that I guess was the driver of the car. As far as the guy that committed the murder, Van, what's this guy's name? Van something. I got to see Van Watkins. I think he's still. I think he's still in jail. We'll see. Nick Dial. We have a listener, Nick Dial, who is a he's in the prison system down in North Carolina. Okay, he's
Yeah.
still locked up. There you go. Yeah, I got it. Van Walk.
We got an insider
So
down there.
he's probably got about another 20 years, I'd imagine. The guy that actually did this. But let's move on, Donnie. They actually did I believe, an A&E special on this. If you want to look that up, Killer Speaks, I think it's called. Um,
Jesus.
it's like it's not just for him. It's like one of those
Oh.
first 48 kind of shows. They
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
go and like talk to them and stuff. Um, so we move on here, Donnie, to last night. All right, settle down, Nick Dial. We see. All right, take it easy. Nick Dial's a sheesh We got the name. We got it. Settle down.
Get it right,
Uh,
Jeff. Damn it. Jesus.
this guy said it like four times. He's like, I see it. We got it here. Take it easy. 2046 is his release date, which I would imagine he'll be pretty old at that point, probably in his 70s.
Yeah.
Um, we get into last night, Donnie. Not a particularly eventful night in college basketball. Not really. Mondays are generally not great, really. Oklahoma, Donnie, get worked again. And what more do you say about Oklahoma? They're getting to the point for me where I'm not sure if they're a tournament team. I mean, if they lose, let's say, if they have like 4 games, I think left, if they lose 3 of the last 4, are they deserving? I mean, this team is really poor right now. Defensively, they're an absolute mess. I'm trying to get the box score up here, but as always, it's
Got worked.
be difficult to find. Yeah, I mean, you lose by 30 points. You give up 104 in the process. Trey Young is, you know, just having a lot of trouble now that people are guarding him a different way. I mean, this team is a mess right now,
Yeah, they
defensively,
don't
really
get
in
in,
any
Jeff.
way you look at it.
They don't get in. There's no way because you look. I mean, just looking at their schedule. What do you have? 6 straight losses, and then you're gonna play Kansas State. You might win that game. You better hope you win it. Then you go to Baylor. You'll probably lose, and then you have another coin flip with Iowa State, which you should win that game. But they're 6-9 right now. So let's just say they even go. I don't know what 7-11. Does that get you in because you have Trey Young? Like, I don't think so.
I mean, they've lost 10 of 12, I think, at this point, or 9
Yeah,
of
come on,
11.
man.
It's pretty amazing. As far as currently, they're a 6 seed, in my opinion. But I think that's going to be dropping pretty quickly here. This is a team that, you know, as far as their resume, I mean, it's pretty good as far as like their strength schedule, RPI. The losses, they don't have any really awful losses. I mean, other than Iowa State, but they also have some good wins. They beat Wichita, beat USC, but USC is that a really good win? They're on the bubble. Yeah, Oklahoma's I think really gonna having some issues and gonna have some issues if they keep this up. And I don't really know how it's gonna change because no one's gonna stop guarding Trae Young the way they are, and no one else has really been able to step up. And this team continues to have major issues on the defensive end. Another awful. This is their worst showing of the year last night. You got to ask what's Lon Kruger? Where's he at during all this? Oklahoma, bad, bad, bad. Notre Dame loses last night, Donnie. A game that you really couldn't afford to lose. I mean, you have a small chance of you maybe making yourself relevant. You beat Miami last night. Maybe last game of the year you get Bonzi Colson back. You beat Virginia. Maybe you have a little bit of a shot. But I mean, Notre Dame's going to have to make a run in the ACC tournament, which is definitely possible with this group if they can get healthy. But a tough night. Lonnie Walker had a big night last night, Donnie.
Yeah, heading down the stretch, he played like a 4-year veteran out there, Jeff. Because if you watch the game at all, Notre Dame had control late in that ball game, up to what, maybe between 7 to 5 minutes left. And typical Notre Dame, you figure they would run their offense, get good open looks, and Miami would be the team that struggled because Miami's not about finesse and making shots, particularly from long range and on the road. But they played well. They went on a double-digit run, like a 13-0 run to close out, where that most important game was. I mean, it ended up a 3-point game, but it really wasn't that close down the stretch. Miami was in control the last 4 to 5 minutes of that ball game, getting 4.5 points, didn't need it. Real nice win for Miami. That puts Miami back into the conversation of making the tournament. And as it says down there, Notre Dame now looking on the outside. And I don't know where it gets any better. And I don't want to hear this nonsense either, Jeff. If they stumble down the stretch and, they go into the ACC tournament, win one game, and all of a sudden it pops up, well, Bonzi Colson can come back, and the tournament committee goes, Notre Dame's worth a lot of money to us here. If we could put them in the tournament, they're going to get a following. They're going to sell tickets. People are going to watch, and Bonzi's back. I don't give you any credit for that. So you're saying these losses down the stretch, if they had Colson, it was an automatic W, they win the game? Don't do that, committee. Don't shave one of these mid-majors off for one of these teams that deserves to be in because there's a pipe dream like Colson's going to come back and dominate all of a sudden in the tournament. Don't do that.
Yeah, I have a hard time making that argument, Donnie, frankly, just because, listen, I think there's a reason you're a bubble team, okay? And it's questionable if we really want to see you in or not. Listen, if Bonzi Colson played last night, they would have won. I mean, they've had a couple games that they would have won, but I do understand they didn't. You have to have some sort of checks and balances that if he would have been in there, this is an All-American. This is a top 10 player in the country that if you had, you'd have been in a better situation. But listen, they need to do some work here. They got plenty of work to do. They're not in my, you know, final 8 out. They're not really. They got to do some work. They got to win in the ACC tournament, in my opinion, or beat Virginia and make a deep run.
Yeah, beat Duke and
Wisconsin,
Virginia on the way there. You're right. Yeah.
right? You may be losing the title game, and beat Virginia in the regular season. Um, Wisconsin last night, who, look, I had Minnesota. I had a small play on the money line. What are you going to do? I'm not into living in the past with the plays that I make. I lost. What are you going to do? Minnesota, Wisconsin was down 3, I believe, with 14 seconds to go. You can't find a way to close the game out. I mean, that's just bad coaching, and it makes a year that for Minnesota worse that was bad already. This team is gutless. You didn't think that the loss of Reggie Lynch would matter this much. This team is bad. And look, Richard Pitino might be to blame for this. This team has really never been the same since that game where they played with against 3 players and almost lost.
Yeah.
If you look at their season really turned at that point. Then the stuff with
Couple
Reggie Lynch
suspensions.
happened.
Yeah.
Yep, it just is never the same. Um, a pretty tough way to lose last night if you had Minnesota.
No, it was definitely. I actually didn't see the end of the game, but Wisconsin was in control for most of that game, I believe. But how do you that's a tough one there. I mean, you're going to have bad beats and great wins and great losses, but to factor in forget about even the melt or down the stretch, they're not scoring, but to go into overtime where you're getting what, 7.5, 8 points at game time and not be able to cover in overtime when basically it should be a 50-50 coin flip on who wins that game as it is, that's a tough one to surrender. And in overtime, Jeff, did Minnesota even score? How did they get beat by 10 in 5 minutes?
They were outscored 14-4 in overtime.
Ooh, that's a brutal one, man.
So yeah, it was pretty brutal. They were just lost, man. But we move on to tonight's action. A little bit of a bigger card, Donnie. What do we have on the line today, and what are we looking at?
Yeah, let's take a look here, get over some action here. Flip it over to these games. A lot of good games today. I mean, let's look at scanning the card over. We'll start, Jeff, in the SEC, 531, 532. If you've been living under a rock, Mississippi's having trouble all year. Kennedy was supposed to be out at the end of the year. One of those like, hey, man, you know what? Ride it out, help us out, coach the team. We know you're going at the end of the year. We'll start the coaching search. Now, all of a sudden now, Jeff, he's already out the door, so they're a complete mess. Missouri sitting at home here, 67% of those early ticketed wagers lining up to take the Missouri Tigers. Line opened up at 9.5, Jeff, but all of a sudden Pinnacle now showing -8. Chris, -8.5 bet on line, -8.5 with half juice here. A messy situation for Mississippi, Jeff. Can they overcome it and play well at Missouri, or is there just a fork in this basketball team the rest of the way in SEC play?
Yeah, this is a real interesting game because I've been chatting about with some other people about, will Mississippi be up for this game, or will they just kind of be, now that their coach is gone? Maybe they liked him or whatever. From what I read down there, they overall didn't trust Kennedy. They didn't like the relationships they had with him. They thought he was a little bit of a kind of a sneak, I feel like. Um, this is interesting because the line's coming down. People, a lot of bets coming in on Missouri here. A lot of people thinking that Mississippi's done, stick a fork in them. But here's the thing about Mississippi: they're still a pretty good offensive team, no matter no matter what happens to their coach. It's not like Missouri is made a ton of waves offensively either in this conference. I don't think Mississippi's dead. I think they'll have a little bit of pep in their step if they're making a move. Their coach is gone. Now they can kind of freely play, and they don't have to kind of worry about some of the issues that they had there. I don't hate Ole Miss in this game. As I look at the line, I see it this morning. It's coming down a bit. I kind of like Ole Miss at this number.
All right, we'll keep it moving right down the shift, Jeff. We'll go a little action here. Northern Iowa versus Valparaiso. I went on Valparaiso a couple weeks back here. We'll see if they can continue that struggle here. Missouri Valley Conference action. Northern Iowa, Jeff, what we know about them, they're going to slow it down. They're going to try to play good defense. Jacobson's going to get them into the right sets, but sometimes they have trouble scoring, Jeff. And we'll take a look to see if that counters over on the road. 62% of the early tickets, Jeff, coming in on Valparaiso here. Line opened up at 4, but that's dropping now. Pinnacle actually showing a -3 in the favor of Valpo Blood, +102. Chris at -3. Bet online has already shifted, Jeff, to -2.5, -102. So people feeling Northern Iowa out there. And these are the type of games that are always interesting because sometimes with Valpo, moving up, it's a little bit of a mixed bag what you're actually going to get from either one of these competitors here. But taking a look at Valpo itself, usually tough at home in the past, but we know there's going to be a restriction on possessions here. If Northern Iowa can get a lead, they're probably going to be able to hang on here. Do you see an upset in the making, Jeff, with Northern Iowa on the road? Does Valpo get it done at home?
I mean, I don't know how you could think that Northern Iowa's going to cover. I mean, last 10 road games, they're 0-9-1 against the spread. They're 2-10 overall this year on the road against the number, and 7-18 overall in all games. They don't cover, man. And on the road, they definitely don't. This team's scoring under 60 points a game away from their home stadium, shooting 39%. Now you head over to Valpo, a team that has has been one of the better offensive teams in this conference. Their issue at times has been on the defensive end. It's kind of a clash in styles here, but both these teams generally are going to go slow. They're not going to. This is going to be 85-80 or anything. I don't think. The problem that I have with Valpo is sometimes they can't guard without fouling. They do foul a lot, but it's hard for me to get involved with Northern Iowa on the road. I just won't do it. It's kind of an auto thing for me. Even at 3, I mean, Donnie, they're 4-11 against the spread in conference. I mean, that's just nowhere near good enough. I have no interest in Northern Iowa at anywhere but home.
Yeah, it's funny about that because if you switched, game floor, so to speak, and you put Valpo at UNI, you probably would lead UNI because when you look, the last 3 wins that Valpo does have, home against Indiana State, home against Illinois State, home versus Bradley, 3 nice wins. And in all 3 of those games, you beat Indiana State by 6. You beat Illinois State by 16, and then you trump Bradley just right over the weekend, 77-64. So playing well at home, there might be some value. But sometimes, Jeff, a lot of people just still get caught up in names because UNI over the years has been a really good basketball team. All of that, what was it, Al Farik, Manouche, whatever the guy's name was back in the day in like 2010, making those runs. UNI has been a very good team, but let's just see if they can continue. But I'm on the same side as you, Jeff. Either one of these teams, if they were at home, I would take it. You're basically looking for Valpo, what, Jeff? 2.5 just to win the game. If it gets into a fouling situation at the end, you should be able to get that cover. So it should be an interesting one. 543, 544, Jeff. Yeah. There you go. I'll leave for Nash. Yeah. Who else was on that team? They had who was the good point guard they had about a year or two ago? The black kid. Really good play. Was it Wes something?
Wes Washington.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, whoever that kid was. That's really, really fun teams to watch. Jeff, NC Greensboro, Wofford tonight, another low spread, 543, 544. 478 tickets have been tracked in this one. Slight lean, Jeff, here for the road team, NC Greensboro, -2 across the board, so not much movement there. Over under, Jeff, sitting at 136.5. Got to say right now, Jeff, leaning towards the home team here, Wofford. How about you?
Yeah, I'm leaning that way myself. I think it kind of ends tonight for Greensboro. They had a real good run, been real good over the course of the year. But yeah, I like the home team advantage here. Wofford's 12-2 straight up at home, 49%, real good. Obviously, we know Fletcher McGee and Cam Jackson, 82 points a game there in that home stadium, and they've been real good on the defensive end at home as well. They're not going to get totally run on over on the boards. They're decent there. Um, the trouble that you have against Greensboro is, can you handle a press? Can you handle when they have the ball, them slowing it down? But here's what I like about Wofford this year: revenging a road loss against an opponent. In the next game, they're 3-0. And over the last 16 of those games, they're 12-4. So they're revenging losses pretty well. It's hard to beat Wofford twice in the season. The first game was real competitive. It was only a 4-point loss in Greensboro. You're going to give me 2, and I have a home court advantage, and it's the end of the year, and the team I'm playing, has played real well over the last 10 or so games. Yeah, give me Wofford. I think Fletcher McGee will find a way, and I think they'll get the win here tonight.
No, I like that play. And I was one of the games because I know you picked that 3-pack on the card, and I was already looking it over. And I love the lean towards home teams because, again, Jeff, the stats don't lie. Most of these teams in these conferences, regardless of where it's at, it's hard to win on the road in conference, especially when you're playing a competent basketball team, which is why the Valparaiso sitting at home there's a little bit enticing. Same thing with Wofford, and then also you're looking at Missouri there, should be able to pull down that win. So 3 interesting games on the pack, but a lot of games. Maction is in play tonight. I'm taking a look at a few of those games. We'll be able to break down those as the afternoon goes on, Jeff. And we're still going to talk a little bit of college basketball. Let's slide it down here, Juan Mata. Give me your 4 top seeds. Anybody in the chat box can chime in with who they think, or maybe, getting into it where the big man or me doesn't think there's going to be a top 4 seeds, Jeff. Give me your top 4 seeds as it stands right now. And also, more importantly, Jeff, who's the true number 1? Who's getting that top line situation for you?
I think the overall number 1 seed right now is Villanova. I think they're the best team. I think they have the resume to be the number 1. I think if we look at all the teams, if I'm looking at it from a player by player, they have the best team. They're second in the country offensively. Good rebounding team. They have the best guard in the country in Brunson. Phil Booth should be back this week, which is absolutely huge defensively for them. Bridges has been great. DiVincenzo's really come into his own over the last year or two. They're very well coached. They have 4 top 25 wins, 9 top 50 wins, second in RPI. I think Villanova is the best team in the country, in my opinion. I think they will have the number 1 overall seed because I do envision them obviously winning the rest of their games and making a run. And listen, keep in mind the games that they lost, they were without a really good player. So the game against St. John's, the game against Providence, if Phil Booth was in that game, they'll win. They would have won. I mean, they lost by, I think, 4 and by 3. So I think with him in there, they probably would have been able to get the job done in those games. As far as the rest of the 4, I'll go Virginia. I'll go Kansas. I'm happy to see them at number 1 because I have a big future on them. And I think they have played real well down the stretch here. 10 quadrant 1 wins. The most in the country. As far as my other one, I'm going to go Xavier. I think they're a
Mm,
team that,
yeah.
I know people will say, okay, well, the biggest step up games they've had, they've lost to Villanova, but they still have an overall really good resume. They have plenty of good wins on this schedule. You beat Baylor, who's a tournament team. You beat Cincinnati. You beat Creighton a couple times, who's a good team. Butler, Seton Hall. You beat East Tennessee State, who's going to come out of the SoCo probably. So you have some pretty good wins there. And as far as bad losses, you don't really have any bad losses. Providence is a team that people are going to say that's a bad loss. Well, not really. It's a tournament team. They don't have any really glaring losses, and the RPI's there. Strength of schedule is absolutely fantastic. And Donnie, this is something that I really look at when I'm dealing with a number one seed and any high level seed. How did they do in the non-conference, and was their strength of schedule good enough? Xavier had a really good 34. The conference RPI they faced was at fifth. You look at a team like Michigan State, a team that other people think is a number one seed. You look at their resume, Donnie. This is important to mention. They're out of conference. Their strength of schedule for the non-conference 250th strength of schedule in non-conference. That means, Donnie, they didn't play anyone, and their schedule is front-loaded with a lot of patsies. 26 wins they have are against the RPI top 150 or worse. I'm talking about wins against Stony Brook, DePaul, Southern Utah, Houston Baptist, Savannah State. I mean, that's the kind of out-of-conference schedule that they're facing. It's not good enough, and they should not be rewarded for playing a schedule like that. Their overall SOS is not good either. It's 99th. Every other team is very high. For that reason, it's why they're not a number one seed. So me,
Yeah, I'll go a
Villanova,
couple. Yeah, yeah.
Kansas, Virginia, Xavier.
Yeah, I mean, I always looked at a little bit of a grain of salt in this because I know how the NCAA works, Jeff. I know who they want to actually succeed in the tournaments, and they like to play down. To me, Xavier doesn't make the NCAA any money, and they're going to say, well, we're already going to put Villanova as a one seed. We can't have two in the Big East. They're going to end up sliding Michigan State in there when Michigan State's probably going to end up winning the Big Ten tournament. The one team I really want to see get in there because I think they're deserving, and I think they are going to win the American, Jeff, is Cincinnati sneaking around that mid-2. I think they might be able to get up to a 1 depending on what happens. The one team that's currently sitting up there, I have Duke a little bit lower on that 2 line, Jeff, but I'll go Virginia, Villanova, Michigan State, and Cincinnati sneaking into that 4 spot there, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna sneak. I mean, they're a 3 seed at this point. I don't think winning the American's gonna move it too far. I mean, the American's not good this year. I don't know. I don't know if there's a situation there. You can't lose to Houston. You lost. Uh, y- what else do you have? You have a loss to Florida. This is not awful. I don't know. I don't know if they can get that far, but I like Cincinnati a lot. As far as Donnie teams here that I want to kind of maybe introduce a team or two every week that I'm talking about low seeds. I'm talking about a 9 seed, a 12 seed,
Yeah.
to teams
Yep.
that can maybe make a bit of a run. And Donnie, I'll tell you what, a team that I'm looking at that I think can make some kind of and I'd love to see them try to maybe improve their standing, maybe get up to like a 7 seed, maybe a 6 seed. I don't know if it'll happen. I mean, it's rare that it'll happen, but hey, if they make a good run in their conference tournament, I can see it. I like this Houston team. I'd like to see what they could do in the tournament. We saw them live on Sunday. You talk about a team, great player in Rob Gray running the point. They have some real good shooters. A team that can rebound a hell of a lot. They have a good pace to them. I think they're a team that can maybe make some noise. Are they going to go to the Final Four? No, but I think if they could try to find their way into that 6 seed, 7 seed, you kind of want to avoid the 8, 9. You want to avoid being a 7 seed because if you win your first matchup, you got to face the 1 or 2 seed. You get to that 6 seed, you get a decent matchup against a 3 seed if you can beat that playing game. I'm looking at Houston. I think they're a team that we got to keep our eye on here, Donnie, out of the American.
No, I like the American. No, I agree with you there because what's going to win when you get into those pod systems, Jeff? When you're out in environments that are let's just say you're playing on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, especially in the American. As we know, Jeff is in Orlando, which is absolutely ludicrous, ridiculous. Are you telling me Cincinnati fans, Temple fans, the Northeastern teams are going to fly down there, or South Florida is going to pack it in Orlando or Central Florida? Come on with that. Why is that game in New Orleans there? But what I'm getting back to, Jeff, is you need defense in those sterile environments that you're not used to playing in a new arena. You have to play lockdown defense, Jeff. You have to rebound. You have to get the 50-50 balls. Houston's going to be able to do that.
I'm also looking, Donnie, at a possible maybe a 13 seed making a run. I think he can win a game or two. Bucknell. I'm very high on this Bucknell team. Had some real valuable experience last year in the tournament. And this year, I think you look at this out of conference schedule, Donnie, and pretty impressive. I mean, you played Arkansas, North Carolina, Maryland, VCU, Monmouth, who I know Monmouth's not playing well this year, but overall, generally a good out of conference team to play. Went to St. Joe's and played there. Beat Vermont, beat Ball State, who is ranked in the top 90 RPI. It's a Bucknell team that faced some real good opponents, Donnie. They also have some wins against some pretty legit competition. They beat LaSalle, beat Richmond, beat some A10 teams. Bucknell's a team I'd keep my eye on. Very senior laden. Donna Fallon, a great player. Stephen Thomas. I mean, they have some real good players down at Bucknell, up with Nathan Gray up at Bucknell. Might be a team that we want to check out in their conference tournament. I think they'll win the Patriot League. Could if they face like a Clemson in game one, I would almost be looking at an upset there maybe.
Yeah, no, it would be fun to watch. They're the games that are interesting. You have juniors and senior laden teams that know how to run their systems well, get good open looks, and really shorten the games. It should be fun to get into. That's why the tournament's great. Every year to me, Jeff, the tournament actually gets better because these mid-majors, seem to get better and better every year. They can legitimately take down some of these middle-rung teams. So I'm looking forward to it, Jeff. And we talked last night watching that Kansas game. We're close. Conference tournaments are right around the corner, man.
Also, keep in mind on a game this week with a lot of importance. It's Thursday night, South Dakota State. That's a big game over in that area of the country. Both those teams playing real well. That probably is a preview of the two best teams in that conference. South Dakota beat them in the first game. Now they got to go to Brookings to face the Jackrabbits. Big game in that conference. Keep an eye out for that. Couple comments here on what we're talking about. Cougars have a lot of upside, says Gogster, agreed. People have disagreements on Duke. Duke has been a disappointment this year. Yeah, look, I mean, there's some games I think they should have had. They need to get better from the guard position. Young Jeezy, settle down, man. I mean, they haven't been as good as I thought they'd be. Disappointing isn't a word for them. I mean, Young Jeezy, you're making the case that they're disappointing with four freshmen, like they're not the best four freshmen in America. I mean, they have the best freshmen in America. I mean, come on, man, with that. They get the best recruits. The fact that you're making an excuse for them is kind of laughable, frankly. They should not have lost to Boston College. They should not have lost these teams. It doesn't hurt any other team, Young Jeezy. They're getting the best recruits. They haven't played well. Duval's not been good enough. Gary Trent's largely been not good enough all year. Grayson Allen's not been particularly good at all either. You want to be a great team, you got to beat Virginia's. You got to beat those kind of teams. Any chance UL Lafayette can win a game or two? Yeah, I mean, sure. I'd like to see them as far as face a quality opponent. I mean, they've been facing a lot of Sun Belt teams, and Donnie, as we know, the Sun Belt it's a pretty poor conference. I mean, outside of Georgia Southern, there's not a lot of great competition. You look at out of conference for them, you beat Iowa, Richmond. I mean, other than that, not a lot of great success. I don't know. They got
no. It's one of those conferences, Jeff, with a lot of anonymity too. Yeah. I mean, you got Georgia State, Georgia Southern. You got a lot of these Louisiana teams. We even saw cappers out there, Jeff, have no idea that Lafayette is not ULL Lafayette. So people get tripped up in that conference, man.
Yeah, people don't remember. They call them Louisiana now, I believe. So it's like,
yep.
People don't seem to remember that. But yeah, I mean, could they win a game? Maybe. I mean, they didn't really in any of this. They faced Clemson, they got the doors blown off. So, yeah. This is the comment of the day. I got to read this. Young Jeezy. They have two top freshmen. Duval is not a top point guard. Are you absolutely out of your mind? I mean, really? Do you have any idea what you're talking about, dude? Trayvon Duval is the best point guard in the class, dude. He was sixth overall in the top 100. What do you mean he's not a top point guard? You're making excuses. You're making excuses. You're not trying to lump him in with the rest. But the truth of the matter is, he was rated higher in my numbers and the recruiting databases at all the recruiting spots over Colin Sexton. He was better than, and obviously, Trey Young. What are you talking about? He's not a top point guard. He's not been good enough after being a high level recruit. He hasn't been good enough. Stop making excuses for him. They gave Steve Forbes an extension. Yes, they did, which is big. I don't know that if I'm Steve Forbes, I might have been looking towards a higher end job. He must really like it down there. Donnie, you saw that, right? Steve Forbes probably right now could probably go and coach at a higher end institution. He signs an extension with Eastern Tennessee State till 2023. How about that?
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where they're trying to say, "Hey, we love you here. You can be a lifetime coach here. Please stay with us here." But we all know what those contracts and coaching means. If someone just steps up and you say, "Well, we give them this big buyout," like you got to buy them out for $5 million. One booster at one Power Five program blows that out of the water. So nice story. Hope he stays. But we've seen it before. We had a lot of people telling us Jeff Scott Frost would love UCF and would never want to leave now either.
Have you watched Duval? It doesn't matter though. You said he's not a top point guard. On the card, he was a top point guard. I'm not saying that he wouldn't be or would be good. I'm saying due to the ranking he had, he should be better. You're making excuses as to why he's not a top. He was. He should be better. It has nothing to do with Ryan Leaf. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. Nothing. You said Trayvon Duval shouldn't be lumped in with everyone else. Yes, he should. He's a top recruit. He should have the same thing. Your exact words were they have 4 freshmen. Okay, so you're talking about the freshmen. They're all top 10 recruits. They need to be better. They're disappointing. That's exactly what we're saying here. You're embarrassing yourself right now. Good point, Normal Nation. I usually like you, Young Jeezy. I don't like this point, though. I don't think it makes any sense. Phillies are in talks with Jake Arrieta. Yes, I think they should go make that move. They need a top flight pitching guy. Aaron Nola is great, but you need to get better. I don't think Eichhoff's. We'll see with him. Is Vinny? If you can go out and get Arrieta, Donnie, you have Arrieta, Nola, Vinny Velasquez, Eichhoff. Not a bad little rotation there all of a sudden. If you're the Phillies.
Yeah, no, they're trying to step up their game, which I agree. Which I think the whole thing with Arrieta was they're trying to pry some of what the Boston Red Sox just did, where you have a high-level agent, and he's rep by Boris, I believe, as well. So Boris is probably saying, well, he's worth $290 million, and everyone's like, yeah, good luck with that. And maybe the Phillies come in like, well, maybe we don't want him for 5 years, but we'll give you 2 years, $50 million or $55 million, whatever it is, with an opt-out after 2, because we don't want to sign you long-term, but we have a flush with cash. We can do it. So sometimes some of these teams that are willing to really bend over those first 1, 2, or 3 years because they're flush with cash can get away with it. I wouldn't hate the signing at all.
Donnie, does it bother you the Phillies have no left-handed starters? Does that bother you?
No, because they're not ready to win. I'm not even. I'm looking at the Phillies as saying take the next step, being competitive. Because if you watched any one of me and the BMOC shows last summer, it was all right. Let's open up the baseball card, and I would go on a 10-minute rant that the Phillies have no idea what they're doing. So until they're ready to win, I don't really care what type of starters they have left or right-handed. I just want to see some improvement where they're competitive, Jeff, on a day-to-day basis. Then we'll worry about that later.
Yeah. Last thing on Duke, and that's all, Young Jeezy, I'm saying here. I don't know that he is a top player either, but rating wise, he should be. And you've proved our point that he's been disappointing. That's what we're trying to say here. That's what all of us are saying. The only player that hasn't been disappointing are Wendell Carter and Begley. They've been very good. But there's plenty of time for Duke. I have a feeling that by the end of the season, they're going to be there with everybody else. They just need consistent guard play. If they can get it, they will be there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can pull off the Arrieta move. Obviously, you mentioned they are flush with cash. Donnie, we head back to our TV classic of the day. We've stopped this segment for a while. Obviously, we had the Super Bowl going on. And for anyone that's new, we kind of go back to some of our favorite shows over the last 10 years or so and kind of relive some of the old stuff. And Donnie, I'm watching The Wire again, and I urge you, if you've watched The Wire once, it's always important. Go back and watch it again. I've watched The Wire through and through hundreds of times probably at this point. But I go back to season 4, and I remember how the first time I ever watched it, and just I don't think I'll ever watch another show where it's when you watch a show, Donnie, you just like you can't stop watching it, and you remember the first time you watched it. Watching The Wire was like the first time I had sex. It was like it was special, Donnie. Sometimes you can't say that. I mean, I love the show. It's the most perfect piece of entertainment I've really ever watched, other than Sopranos. You put them both up the same, and season 4 was just great. And I go back to this episode, and it was filled with plenty of stuff. And I know, Donnie, might have been a while since you've seen this, but we go back to episode 6 in season 4. Now, season 4 centered around the school system basically, and there were 4 kids that they followed around, and their day to day and
Yes.
that kind of thing. And
Yep.
if you remember the one character, Naaman, his father was
Hmm.
Weebay, his father was locked up, and
Yes.
his mother
Jail. Yeah.
basically, yeah, his mother basically, she's living off the money that the
Yes.
Barksdale organization was paying her, basically
Yeah.
for Weebay's service, kind of like the mob does.
Yep.
They take care of the family,
Yep.
but
Yep. Like
money's
that
run
pension
out.
program. Yeah. Yep.
Yes, yes, yes. But money's run out, and she's basically pushing her son into the same life. Her son is, she wants him out in the corner. She wants him
Got to be the
dealing
man
with a
in the house
package.
now, Jeff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So she basically goes to Bodie and says, "Hey, Bodie, give my guy a corner." But the problem that Naaman has is he's not cut out for the game. He's not smart enough. He doesn't have it. Now he tries to act, elusive basically, and act tough, but he's just not. And he becomes kind of a liability, becomes kind of a fraud. Now this episode centers around not only that, but it centers around the election and Kami Kartetti basically, finding a way to win the election after a late smear ad. But the best part of this episode, Donnie, is Omar Little is set up by Marlowe. Instead of going at Marlowe because he knows he can't necessarily beat him, he sets him up in that shooting at that store or whatever. They go
Yep.
in and they
Yep.
shoot the delivery lady, and then they hit the store owner, and they end up blaming it on Omar. And Omar gets
Yeah.
arrested, and he goes to prison, and he kind of finds out that he's not going to be able to survive in prison because all the people he'd robbed over the years were in prison as well. So the show is just great, and this episode was awesome because it got into all those different ends, and Naaman was really at the top, and Colvin's starting that new class where it's all these bad students, and it's about kind of just seeing how in these neighborhoods it's not necessarily about what you want to teach the kids. It's just about what they expect and where they think they're going to be. Because most of the kids, they're really just kind of buying time until they're out in the street doing their thing. It's fascinating, and it just goes through so many fascinating civic things that if you haven't seen the show, you need to watch it. It's a must.
Yeah. By the way, Marlo Stanfield, Jeff, a top 5 all-time character for me in any TV or movie.
Interesting. I wasn't a gigantic
I
fan of
love
his. I
Marlo.
think
I love Marlo.
he was everything wrong with how you should be. I mean, he was cold and calculated for sure, but and that's what was so fascinating about the show because if you remember when Avon Barksdale, Donnie, specifically Wood Harris, who played such a great character,
Yeah.
do you remember this scene where one of the guys, the guy Cuddy, decided that
Yeah.
he didn't want to be in the game anymore. He's like basically, you know,
Yep.
you know, basically Avon's like, we'll put you in the office, and he goes, "Nah, you're not hearing me, man. You know, I'm not in this no more. I can't be in it no more." And Avon basically lets him leave on his own accord. He says, "Okay, you want to retire? Okay, you're out." Marlowe didn't have like he didn't see people. He didn't see like people's feelings. He was just a cold, calculated motherfucker. Like it didn't matter what he didn't see people. He didn't give them an opportunity. If you fucked with him, you were immediately murdered. And
Yeah.
Avon did a good job of only basically involving violence when he needed to. And when you're a boss of that stature, I just didn't think. And at the end, it fucked Marlowe. Marlowe killed too many people. He was too much of a target. he was just kind of he was a cold, calculated motherfucker. That was just
Yeah,
kind of how
don't
he
get
had.
Jeff. Don't end up in the vacants, man. You're gonna end up in the vacant if you talk smack around Marlowe.
Yeah, it was really fat. That was what a fascinating show, man. Just a great, great, great show. That season changed Michael too. Yeah, Michael became a cold killer as well. Slim
Yeah,
Charles was a
yes,
great
he did.
character. Yeah, Slim Charles was a great character.
Wanted to
Cuddy
be
put in his
boxing in the
work.
gym. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes. Cuddy was a good character. He's one of my favorites. Slim
Yeah.
Charles as well. Proposition Joe, he was a great
Rock
character.
Joe.
A lot of good ones. So yeah, a great show that we'll miss. Donnie, also last night I was just going on YouTube and I saw someone on Twitter mention the Wonder Years. You know that show, The Wonder Years?
Yeah. Winnie
And
Cooper.
I hadn't
Yeah.
seen it. Yeah, I hadn't seen it for years, and I just typed in Wonder Years, and the pilot was on YouTube, and I watched it.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
never really remembered. That's a pretty good show, man. I never really kind
It
of.
ran for a while. Yeah, it ran for a long time.
Yeah,
Fred
I think
Savage.
I
Yeah.
think I think 5 seasons, and I watched, like, the first
And it.
show, and it was
Yeah.
it was it was pretty good. It was remember it was basically he goes to, like, junior high for the first time, and he Winnie kinda comes over and sits at his table, and his brother starts fucking with him about it, and the
Yeah, they were
principal
tying stuff.
basically. Yeah, yeah, and then her brother dies or whatever, and,
And
yeah, good
there was a
show.
what would not a wives' tale. What's the urban legend was that Marilyn Manson was actually the brother of their friend on that show, which is not true, but it does look like a
Charles
clone of
Manson.
Marilyn Manson. We used to always laugh at that. No, Marilyn Manson, the singer.
Oh, I didn't get to that episode yet. I only went to the
Yeah.
first. Um, Winnie Cooper. It's kind of a violation to say she's hot. She's like a junior high kid. Like, it's kind
No,
of
but I guess
weird.
growing if you were watching the show when you were a kid growing up, you know what I mean? Like you would be like, "Oh,
Oh,
who's the boss?" Like, "Damn,
oh,
what's her
yeah,
name?
yeah.
The Alyssa Milano or whatever."
I actually think now if you see her now, Winnie Cooper, she's very attractive. Um,
Huh.
I can't believe Kevin Arnold never got with her. Bad move by him. Other than that, guys, we'll wrap it up. So tonight, we'll see what's up. A lot of games on the card. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
As far as soccer today, the only game I'm on is Barcelona against Chelsea. I think they'll get the job done in a Champions League. Donnie, Champions League, you got to get into that, Donnie. Champions League, great,
Are we
great event.
champions? I'm a big fan of the FA Cup, Jeff. So I'll stick with that.
What is the FA Cup? Can you tell me what that is?
I believe it's the in England soccer where everybody gets a chance to be a winner. Jeff, is that correct?
So you're basically crowning the England team. Yeah. By the way, Donnie, good segue. Manchester City actually lost yesterday in the
What that?
FA Cup to Wigan of all teams. Wigan Athletic, who is 3 rungs down in the England team. So Jeff had a good 2 month run, but that's about. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Forgot about that. Where is that little fuck?
Yo, Jeff. By the way, I did. Jeff does another show late in the afternoon. I like to chime in there. And the best thing about Jeff is Jeff doesn't believe anything off just like a first sight there. So I pop in, and we all know the big man on campus hates when you do this. Let's just say it's
Well, I'm so used
10:59.
to you having
Jeff,
like
who did you
the
like?
wrench thing.
Jeff, who do you like today in basketball? So I pop in and do the same thing. Like at the end of his show, hey Jeff, what do you think about Notre Dame, Miami? And immediately, that's not him. That's an imposter. Kick him out of here.
Well, I'm so used to you having like that wrench, so I like when I see your name
Yeah,
regular,
true.
I don't,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
that was pretty.
So yeah, I try to make sure we're not got. But everyone have a great night. We appreciate you tuning in today. We'll be back tomorrow with the roundtable. Drew Martin, me, Ian Cameron, Donnie Rightside.
Baseball,
Hopefully, Ian Cameron doesn't go through every Major League Baseball team and
baseball
every
team.
player. I'll be back later with Drew Martin for the bet buffet. I hope I'm back in time. I got to go to the dentist for a quick appointment at 1:45. So hopefully I'm back in time. Everyone have a great night. We'll be back later. We'll be back tomorrow as well. Everyone have a great night. Thanks to Juan for producing. Have a great day. Bye bye.